is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. It's good to be home in New York. I'm Amy Goodman, but we're still on the road for the whole month. Tomorrow night, I'll be in Cambridge at the Cambridge Church, and on Friday night in Amherst in South Hadley. Well, President Obama's in London today ahead of the G20 summit, where world leaders are gathering to discuss the global economic crisis. It marks Obama's first trip to Europe since taking office. At a joint news conference in London with British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, Obama stressed the severity of the economic downturn.
All of us here in London have the responsibility to act with a sense of urgency, and every nation that will be participating has been affected by a crisis that has cost us so much in terms of jobs, savings, and the economic security of our citizens. So make no mistake, we are facing the most severe economic crisis since World War II. And the global economy is now so fundamentally interconnected that we can only meet this challenge together. We can't create jobs at home if we're not doing our part to support strong and stable markets around the world.
While President Obama urged G20 nations to work together on solving the crisis, rifts have already begun to emerge. Earlier, the French President, Nicolas Sarkozy, said France and Germany are not happy with the current draft of the G20 agreement and that he would walk away from the summit if it failed to meet his demands. At today's press conference, Obama said the nature of the crisis demands an integrated response.
I know that the G20 nations are appropriately pursuing their own approaches. And as Gordon indicated, we're not going to agree on every point. I came here to put forward our ideas, but I also came here to listen, not to lecture. Having said that, we must not miss an opportunity to lead, to confront a crisis that knows no borders. We have a responsibility to coordinate our actions and to focus on common ground, not on our occasional differences. So in the days ahead, I believe we will move forward with a sense of common purpose. We have to do what's necessary to restore growth and to pursue the reforms that can stabilize our financial system well into the future. We have to reject protectionism and accelerate our efforts to support emerging markets. And we have to put in place a structure that can sustain our cooperation in the months and years ahead.
Tens of thousands of protesters from around the world are gathering in London to demonstrate against the economic downturn in the G20 summit. Thousands of British police have been patrolling the streets since demonstrations for economic justice and environmental accountability began over the weekend. 5 people were arrested under anti-terrorism laws in southern England on Monday. Several large demonstrations directed at the failed banking and financial sectors are also expected today. April 1st, which some protest organizers are calling Financial Fool's Day. The London police have reportedly warned bankers to, quote, dress down or skip work altogether to avoid being targeted by protesters. Michael Rainsborough of the anti-globalization group G20 Meltdown described one of the day's expected actions.
We're doing a carnival street party at the Bank of England, and because the anti-globalization movement is famous for carnivals and for parties, we thought that would be the best thing to do. But we were adapting it to the kind of the mood because people are very angry, and we've themed it on the 4 horses of the apocalypse. We're saying by going to the Bank of England that the Bank of England has been presiding over AIG-style bonuses for years and years and years. And it's not just a simple problem that we need to see large-scale structural change in our economy if we're going to, make it forward in this economic crisis and in this ecological crisis.
Groups calling attention to the climate crisis and the role of G20 countries in continuing to profit from polluting the environment are gathering for 24 hours of mass direct action. Kevin Smith is a spokesperson for Climate Camp, which is organizing the action.
It's going to be 24 hours in Bishopsgate outside the European Climate Exchange, where we're going to be highlighting the fact that the things that G20 leaders have on the table aren't going to deal with the problem of climate change. In fact, in the context of something like carbon trading, which we're really focusing on, it's making things much, much worse.
for some analysis on why so many people are protesting the G20, what's expected to happen at the summit, I'm joined now by Walden Bello, senior analyst at Focus on the Global South, professor of sociology at the University of the Philippines. He argued recently the United Nations and not a group of the world's 20 richest countries should decide the fate of the global economy. Walden Bello joins us now from Manila. Welcome to Democracy Now! Talk about the G20. Can you start off, Walden, by explaining exactly who the G20 are? What's the history of this grouping?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks, Amy, for having me on. The G20 is a creation of the G7 club of rich countries, and the idea in 1998, 1999 was, for this so-called larger body to come up with proposals to to create a new global financial architecture because of the Asian financial crisis. And I think the relevant point here is that the G20 has never been recognized globally as a representative body, and secondly, that it totally failed to really come up with any sort of recommendations for controlling capital flow so that they wouldn't create the same sort of financial crisis that they did in Asia. And they just bought into the private sectors and the private banks' mantra of self-regulation. So and the point right now is that this body, which excludes 172 other countries, is definitely not seen as a legitimate body to be the one to come up with a solution to the global crisis. And the point that I made here was that it's trying so hard to be exclusive at a time when any kind of approach to this current crisis would necessitate, as inclusive an approach as possible through a legitimate umbrella. And the only umbrella at this point that would enjoy a great degree of legitimacy would be the United Nations and a special session of the United Nations. But, so I think what's happening in London is really a lot of show. They're trying to do in one day what an earlier memorable conference that set up the post-war multilateral order, the Bretton Woods meeting, took 21 days to do, and I think the nations that are coming there, the governments are coming there, are really in a bind because they don't really know what's going to work. So it's this is the kind of uncertainty, this is the kind of fright that they're trying to hide by putting on a show of seeming coordination. So that's and of course I think people are very, very upset because what has happened so far has been so much paying attention to saving the banks, bailing out the banks. And I think that with the big bank bailouts and the bonuses that have been going to bank executives, I think there's just a lot of popular anger throughout the world. That the responses of the G20 is, that they focus mainly on, how do you bail out the current financial system. And in fact, that's in fact what the focus is at this